It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. The search for the British teenager Jay Slater in Tenerife continues as a local business owner describes talking to him just before he disappeared 5 days ago. Also tonight, the Chief Constable of Northamptonshire Police is sacked for gross misconduct after lying about his military service.
It's the first thing that I should be asking our new Home Secretary to do is to look at the process for recruitment of Chief Constables.
Conservative donations slipped to just 10% of overall donations as financial support for the party drops. A judge warns of the scourge of knife crime after a 15-year-old with a worrying interest in knives murders a schoolboy on the way home. A crisis in social care as the government is accused of leaving thousands of unpaid carers to struggle alone. We have a special report.
Until we recognise that, we've got to value our workforce, we'll never be able to resolve that issue in social care.
Plus, Swiftie mania reaches Wembley as the superstar begins the London leg of her UK tour. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. The search for a British teenager who went missing after a night out in Tenerife is focusing on a rural village and a valley below it. Despite extensive efforts involving drones, dogs and a helicopter, no trace of Jay Slater has been found. And tonight, Lancashire Police say they've made an offer of support to the Guardia Civil, but they're satisfied they have the resources they need already. A cafe owner on the island has described to Sky News how he spoke to the 19-year-old before he went missing. Jay had been at the NRG festival in South Tenerife, which ended on Sunday night. He'd been staying at an apartment complex in Los Cristianos. But after the festival, he went to a different apartment in the Masca area, where he stayed on Sunday night. His last recorded location showed rural Destino Park, a mountainous area popular with hikers. One of his friends says he called her on Monday morning to say he was lost, in need of water, and only had 1% phone battery. He told her he was walking back to his apartment after missing the bus. That would have been an 11-hour walk. At 9:04 a.m. on Monday, he was reported missing. Shingi Maurike reports now from Tenerife.
A 5-day search and rescue operation and all the questions that come with it begin here, with this villa in Tenerife's northern mountains. After attending a music festival on the island, on his first holiday abroad, 19-year-old Jay Slater came here with 2 men. Hours later, he went missing. Ophelia, who runs the cafe above the villa, was most likely the last person to see Jay in person. She spoke to him before he headed north, into the rugged hills, away from the bus stop he needed to take him back to the accommodation he was staying in.
I saw the boy in the morning at around 8 a.m. He asked twice what time the bus came. I told him at 10 o'clock. He came back and asked me again, and I told him again at 10 o'clock. After that, he walked off and I didn't see him anymore. Later, I went in my car and I saw him. He was walking fast, but I didn't see him again after that.
That conversation and Jay's movements afterwards raised so many questions about why he decided to take an 11-hour walk home and how he ended up here with 2 strangers in the first place. Events that led to an extensive search operation on land and in the air. It continued into a 5th day, with the focus a ravine overlooking a river. The attempts to retrace Jay's steps, no doubt made more difficult by the arid landscape and temperatures that reach 30 degrees Celsius this time of year. Well beyond Tenerife, the case has invited feverish online speculation. A Facebook group dedicated to helping the search has attracted almost 500,000 members, with new posts suspended due to the volume of conspiracy theories. Less than an hour from where he went missing, this is where Jay was meant to return. His friends and family, who say they are drained beyond words, are still clutching to the possibility he still will.
Well, Shingi's in Tenerife for us tonight. And what's the latest with the search? What's happening this evening?
Well, Gillian, it looks like that search for Jay Slater has ended today with a fifth day and no success. And just to give you a sense of the scale of the operation, we headed up there and we got a sense for those difficult, arid conditions which the search and rescue teams are battling with as they search for Jay. And we also got a better sense of the timeline due to that conversation we had with an eyewitness. That timeline, as I say in my report, opens its way up to several questions. And there's this information vacuum which is being filled with posts on social media that include speculation and that include conspiracy theories. And that's why that Facebook group, which has more than nearly 500,000 members, has now been closed for comments, because this is now at fever pitch. That speculation is a sideshow to what is essentially an incredibly complex search for Jay, which is entering its sixth day tomorrow. And there is a new development tonight, which I can tell you about. That comes from Lancashire Police. They say that they offered to help the Spanish Civil Guard with the search. They were told that because this falls outside of their jurisdiction, they had to get in contact with the Civil Guard, who confirmed that at this time they are satisfied that they have the resources they need, but that offer remains open and they will contact us should that position change. Jay's friends and family who are here in Tenerife will be hoping those resources yield results as the search enters its sixth day tomorrow.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Shingi. The Chief Constable of Northamptonshire Police has been dismissed without notice and put on the police barred list after being found guilty of gross misconduct. Nick Adie, who'd already been suspended, exaggerated his rank and length of service and lied about his naval achievements. It's once again raised questions about the police vetting process. The Sky's crime correspondent Martin Brunt reports.
I'll be totally honest with you. I've been in the police service now for 23 years, just coming up to 23 years. And prior to that, I was a senior leader within the Royal Navy.
That was a blatant lie. Nick Adie was never a senior leader in the Navy. The truth was he was an able seaman, the lowest rank, and he left after 2 years, not 10 years as he claimed.
This is a fantastic evening where we recognise the bravery of officers.
And he wore a Falklands War Medal, claiming to have served in that campaign. But he couldn't have. He was 15 at the time.
I think it's despicable of someone to do that. He could have probably got that job on his own recognizance anyway. So why enhance it? It's stupid. You're just driving yourself up a blind alley. And now he's going to have to pay for it.
The Chief Constable was sacked at a disciplinary hearing. The panel chairman said he'd shown sustained, brazen dishonesty. He'd created a fantasy about his past. He'd told lies with staggering audacity. He'd caused insult and offence to real war veterans.
We're really pleased. We're really pleased.
To politicians, he boasted of his achievements. But the exposure of his false claims to be a war hero had, said the panel chairman, caused lasting harm to the police service.
Nick Adie continued his lies even when he applied to be Chief Constable, but nobody challenged his past. Even the simplest of checks, said the disciplinary panel, would have exposed him.
The poor vetting of police officers is a major issue. This was a Chief Constable slipping through the net.
Clearly, the processes involved that got him into that position have been found lacking, and it's the first thing that I shall be asking our new Home Secretary to do, is to look at the process for recruitment of Chief Constables.
There was another side to Nick Adie, pounding the beat, popular with his staff, a reformer even, and with an eye to publicity.
So if you want to do that, come in and get the matter dealt with now. If you don't, come and join me in one of these.
He challenged the accusations. He claimed he'd simply been sloppy and lazy about his past. In a statement, he said, "To those veterans I have offended, I apologise unreservedly. I have made mistakes. I am human and I am fallible, and for those traits and mistakes, I must take full responsibility." The Chief Constable leaves in disgrace, but there may be more. Prosecutors are now considering whether to charge him with misconduct in a public office, a criminal offence. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Northampton.
There are just 2 weeks to go before we find out who will win the general election and who will be the Prime Minister. Normally, this is the time when politicians would be trying to drum up more support for their campaigns. But today, details of how much was donated to each party has been revealed, and the Conservatives' coffers have suffered compared to others. Sky's political correspondent Dan McCaffrey reports.
And you've just expanded it over time and grown and grown and grown.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And there is nothing but a growing list of problems for the Prime Minister too. On a day in which he wanted to focus on his sales pitch to Welsh voters, it was the state of his party's finances that took centre stage.
God, we're getting hungry now.
According to figures compiled immediately after the D-Day decibel, Labour raised a whopping 75% of the total, equating to £4.4 million. Reform also outperformed the Tories with 742,000, compared with just 292,000 for the governing party. It means the Conservatives have earned less than a tenth of total donations since the campaign began. Away from the farm shop visits, more problems for the Prime Minister at the Welsh Conservative manifesto launch, where he struggled to turn the page on the growing allegations against Conservative candidates, betting on the date of the general election.
Can you hold your hand on your heart and say you are currently not aware of any other Conservatives that you know who may have done the same, who may have placed a bet on the election?
Darren, there's not much more I can add to what I said previously. There are multiple investigations that are currently happening. It's right that those investigations are allowed to proceed. They are independent. They are necessarily confidential, as you will appreciate. There's also a criminal investigation.
And for the party faithful, divided opinions on a difficult campaign.
The view on the door does not reflect what the national polls are saying.
I think the Conservatives will do well in Wales, but as for the rest of the UK, I think we need a stronger campaign.
For Labour also launching the Welsh manifesto today, they can't believe their luck, with Keir Starmer in Scotland using the controversy to attack the Prime Minister.
The Prime Minister is showing a total lack of leadership on this. Let's look at what actually happened. In relation to a general election, the instinct of these Tories, when the general election is called, is not how do we make this work for the country, but how do I make some money?
The Lib Dems are also primarily trying to paint this as a problem for the Prime Minister.
When things like this happen, you've got to stand up and, yes, sometimes you have to apologise, admit the mistakes, but then show that you've learned. And at the moment, he's not showing he's learned.
Cool, this is you. Yeah.
Rishi Sunak has had another bad day, compounding a campaign of bad days. With little money, polls that won't shift, and lots of unanswered questions, the final stretch of campaigning could be the most difficult yet. Darren McCaffrey, Sky News, Rhyl, North Wales.
The Conservative Party has reduced the amount it's spending online on its election campaign. Sky News has seen exclusive data which shows for the first time exactly where parties have been spending. Our online campaign correspondent Tom Cheshire has more.
What we're going to show you reveals how parties are thinking, their deepest desires, their darkest fears. We've been working with Who Targets Me, which tracks political adverts to come up with this map. It shows which party is spending the most online in which constituency, the places where they're desperate to win seats, or desperate to avoid losing them. And this is the overall picture, but we can break that down by party. Let's take you through those one by one over here. So we'll start here with the Green Party and the Lib Dems. We'll get into some of this, but you can see it already. This is the patterns of people where they're targeting. Some of these smaller constituencies, Brighton not really showing up on that really colourful map, but you can see them a bit more clearly here. Lib Dems in the south, you can see that clear emphasis. We'll talk about how well that's going for them. Then we have the Conservatives and Labour. Now, these are both very interesting. We'll come back and we'll talk about how those campaigns have evolved. Finally, let's go over here. We've got Reform UK, the SNP, Plaid Cymru. You can see, obviously, with the SNP and Plaid, that they are looking at their specific geographies when it comes to how much they're spending online. Reform, looking at the constituencies, not many constituencies here, but really targeting those in terms of its digital ad spending, including, of course, Clacton-on-Sea, where Nigel Farage is standing. Back to the two main parties. We'll start with Labour. They have been the biggest spender online this election, nearly £3 million. This is how their campaign has evolved. From the start of the election, targeting lots of constituencies and more or less maintaining that. Now, compare that to the Conservatives over here. They look like they've got a good spread, but actually we'll see as the campaign goes on, it's fewer and fewer constituencies. They're spending a lot less money than Labour. They're targeting, perhaps seeking to defend their heartland, rather than going after the seats. And we compare all of this spending to what the outcome is predicted to be. So 2 maps for you here. Here's the one we had at the beginning, showing who's spending the most in which constituency in terms of online ads. Over there, we have the latest MRP poll by YouGov for Sky News, the one that predicts a Labour landslide. And there's some interesting things we can pick in. First of all, there's a lot of red. We'll talk about that. But specific geographies are also standing out. So down here, if you come with me or squat down, we see this is the sort of A30 corridor being targeted by the Lib Dems. Here you've got the Greens going into the West Country, South Wales, obviously trying to get that. We've got Reform on the eastern seaboard there. Now, how does that translate to when it comes to the prediction, the projection? Again, this isn't, definitely what's going to happen, but this is our best idea of it so far. And you can see, well, the Lib Dems are getting that A30 corridor they're spending big on, but when it comes to the Greens spending big there, well, those are all, actually, they're light blue. So the lighter the constituency, the more of a toss-up it is. It's a marginal call. The Greens perhaps spending there so they can turn that into Greens. That eastern seaboard isn't going quite all Reform's way. But again, back to that big picture, the red on that side versus the red on this side. So that's where Labour's spending. This is what's projected. And you can see why they're spending so much, because a lot of this isn't dark red. It's a toss-up, it's a marginal call. So Labour doing everything they can to get it over line. So that is the overall picture. And it makes sense, really, of when there are all these toss-ups or marginal calls and only the tiniest of margins. Labour is spending so big in so many places.
Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, joins me now live. John, we've heard from the leaders of the Conservatives, Labour and the Lib Dems, but Nigel Farage has also been speaking tonight. What's he been saying?
Well, either intentionally or unintentionally, Mr Farage has provoked a furious row with some comments he's made about the war in Ukraine. In an interview, he has said that the West provoked the war in Ukraine. He says that he's been warning of this since 2014. There will be a war in Ukraine, he claims he said back then. He is blaming what he calls the ever eastward expansion of NATO and the European Union. Well, there's been, for the first time, senior Tories have been provoked into attacking Mr Farage. First time in this campaign up to now. They've barely laid a glove on him, terrified that Tories will switch to the Reform UK in the general election. The Home Secretary, James Cleverly, said that Mr Farage is echoing Putin's vile justification for the brutal invasion of Ukraine. The former Defence Secretary Sir Liam Fox has said the West did not provoke this war in Ukraine. It's shocking Nigel Farage should say so. The most recent former Defence Secretary Ben Wallace has told the Daily Mail that he is voicing sympathy for a dictator who deployed nerve agents on the streets of Britain, a reference to that Salisbury poisoning, of course. And he says Mr Farage is more Chamberlain than Churchill. But it's perhaps significant the most strongest attack on Mr Farage comes not from the Conservatives but from the Labour Party and the Shadow Defence Secretary John Healey, who's talked about Mr Farage licking Putin's boots, and he said that he is really mounted a very strong attack on Mr Farage. Has Mr Farage made his first big blunder of this campaign? A lot of potential Conservatives and potential Reform voters will be pretty offended by these comments.
OK, John, thank you. A teenager has been jailed for what police described as a premeditated and planned attack using murderous violence on 15-year-old Alfie Lewis. A judge has lifted restrictions banning the naming of Badia Shejafad after he was sentenced to at least 13 years in prison. Fraser Maud reports.
An outwardly normal teenager with a worrying interest in knives. Badia Shejafad was just 14 when he attacked 15-year-old Alfie Lewis with a 5-inch kitchen knife outside a primary school in Leeds. CCTV footage from last November shows Shejafad leaving school with friends. He'd been carrying the knife all day. The attack was brief but brutal. 2 stab wounds were inflicted on Alfie, one of them puncturing his heart and causing catastrophic bleeding. The knife can be seen in Shejafad's hand as he runs from the scene. He threw it away seconds later as he made his way home. After his arrest, detectives discovered his dangerous obsession, including images on his phone where he's seen posing with knives. Today in Leeds, a judge lifted the anonymity order preventing Badia Shahjafard from being named and sentenced him to be detained for life with a minimum term of 13 years. A statement from the family of Alfie Lewis said, "Knife crime is an epidemic affecting our youth, even when they're innocent, as Alfie was. Our efforts must now go on trying to influence the changes which are needed to the law to stop our babies being killed so senselessly." During sentencing, the judge, Mr. Justice Cotter, told Shahjafard that he did not believe his defence, that he was trying to scare Alfie away and simply swinging the knife aimlessly. He added, "Knives have stolen so many lives, and you and others must understand how dangerous this obsession is." Alison Cope campaigns against knife crime after her 18-year-old son was stabbed to death just over 10 years ago.
We need to just start making sure that young people have a very consistent message that they will be caught if they're carrying a knife. There will be strong, consistent consequences, and to make them see that carrying a knife ultimately is going to destroy the victim's life, but also their own life.
Badia Shahjafard will now begin a minimum of 13 years behind bars. Alfie Lewis's family say their sentence will last a lifetime. Fraser Maud, Sky News, Leeds.
Some of this evening's other news now for you. Steelworkers will go on strike for the first time in more than 40 years when around 1,500 workers at Tata Steel in South Wales walk out next month. They've announced what they're calling an all-out indefinite strike in protest against plans to close blast furnaces, putting 2,800 jobs at risk.
The point of the action is quite clear. It's to defend jobs, it's to defend communities because there's the impact on the community as well. And it's also about defending the steel industry. None of these job cuts are necessary. They don't actually have to happen. That's what's absolutely appalling about this. This is a company that's awash with money. That's the reality. 1.4 billion given in dividends to shareholders.
An NHS helpline's been set up after patient-sensitive blood test data taken in a cyber-attack was leaked online. The health service has said it receives more than 1,000 cyber-attacks each year, but an overwhelming number are thwarted, so vulnerability is rare. Sky's technology correspondent Arti Nachiappan reports.
Nearly 400 gigabytes of data. It's equivalent to at least 100,000 MP3 songs. That's what the cybercrime group Killin claimed they leaked from Synovis, which runs blood tests for the NHS.
They'll have the dedicated victim page, which will have the logo.
It's called a ransomware attack, where hackers charge companies money to stop their stolen data being leaked. This is how it works.
Most of them have this kind of ransomware as a service affiliate model, which is you'll have the main ransomware gang who will create the actual ransomware themselves. They'll create the dark web leak sites, and then they'll recruit affiliates. They will perform the attacks. They'll deploy the ransomware on these companies. The data will then be posted to the ransomware group's leak site. And if the ransom's paid, it will usually be split. I think with Killin, it's about 85% will go to the affiliate, who's the one conducting the attack. And then kind of 20% goes to actually the Killin ransomware group. Commonly, if the data's being leaked, then the ransom usually hasn't been paid.
The attack has compromised NHS systems, leading to the postponing of thousands of surgeries and appointments. Could you have done more to protect against this happening, and what would that have been?
The NHS receives more than 1,000 cyber attacks each year, and the overwhelming majority of them are prevented and are detected as well. We take cybersecurity extremely seriously. On very, very rare occasions, there will be a vulnerability that's found.
1,134 elective procedures and 2,194 outpatient appointments have been postponed at 2 London hospital trusts since June the 3rd. Blood tests in parts of South London are still running at only 30% of normal capacity, up from 10% last week. Ransomware attacks are on the rise. Last year saw the highest number of victims for these sorts of attacks since tracking began 5 years ago, according to a cybersecurity firm. And last month set a record for the highest number of attacks. We still don't know exactly what data was stolen, but if it is NHS data, this falling into the wrong hands could lead to anything from identity fraud to blackmail. While we wait to hear what it was, what this attack confirms is the threat from cyber attacks is growing and any vulnerable organisation could become a target. Artie Natchipan, Sky News.
The architect of the government's reforms to social care has told Sky News that politicians need to grow up and tackle the crisis in the sector. Sir Andrew Dilnot says the main parties are too reluctant to discuss reform, leaving thousands of unpaid carers left to struggle. Sky's Rob Powell has been speaking to a couple who were forced to sell their home after one of them was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and dementia.
Let me turn the other way. OK, darling?
Meet Norman and Ros. Once a well-paid project manager, Norman took early retirement to care for his wife, who lives with multiple sclerosis and dementia.
I always got the work done, but then it went a bit pear-shaped and and then, as I say, I collapsed in the street. How's your foot?
But the Hertfordshire couple found help hard to come by and were forced to sell their home to pay for care.
My kids learnt a long time ago that their inheritance has gone, right? Because everything's, we don't have any money left. Yeah, we didn't have any money left a while back.
While Ros now receives care at home, others will go into facilities like this one in Norfolk. Docking House looks after dementia patients who have the highest level of dependency. After COVID, a lack of staff meant 30% of the beds here lay empty. Like much of the sector, it relies on overseas labour. Those here say more money and higher wages are needed.
We've got to reward them, and we don't. What amazes me is that we've got a government in power that's been there for 14 years and not been able to tackle social care. We've got an opposition that has never really challenged why social care has never been taken care of.
In many ways, the crisis in social care taps into broader themes of the election. There's the sense of apathy caused by politicians repeatedly making promises and not keeping them. And then this is just another sector depended on by many that quite simply at the moment isn't able to function as it should. The economist Sir Andrew Dilnot chaired a commission to try and fix that, but 13 years on, his plan still hasn't been put into action.
Politicians are reluctant to talk about it, first because they're worried about anything that means an increase in public spending and therefore possibly taxation. It's a shame not to hear about this. This is the biggest risk that isn't managed that all of us face.
I'll take the ironing over and get him dry.
Back in Hertfordshire, Norman also wants politicians to step up.
Throwing money at the NHS won't solve it. They've got 6 million of us unpaid carers, right? If they help us, we can help the system.
One story among many as this couple takes each day as it comes.
We keep pegging on, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, every day.
Every day.
Rob Powell, Sky News in Hertfordshire.
Well, Taylor Swift fever has well and truly hit London tonight. Tens of thousands of fans have descended on Wembley Stadium for the first night of the Eras Tour, which is expected to bring more than 600,000 people and £300 million to the capital. They're marking the occasion with carefully planned outfits, plenty of sequins and even the exchanging of friendship bracelets.
These are the ones I've traded so far. These are the ones that are still to trade. So it's from one of her songs that's like, make the friendship bracelets, take the moment and taste it. And so people started making them and trading them at the shows. So each panel is an album with the entire track listing.
Whole life has been leading to this moment, really.
I think I'm just excited to be in the same vicinity as her. Like, just to be in the same room.
Her fans go to a lot of effort, don't they? Swifties. That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace-Simons, and Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Daily Mail. Nigel Farage claims the West provoked Putin into invading Ukraine. We'll be right back. Do stay with us.